Just a few quick things before we go ahead and get started. We are on Rumble. In fact, if there are people that can't watch this tonight, you can go to our Rumble channel. This is being recorded. We're live streaming it, and it is being recorded, so you can watch it later. A second thing that's happening is most of you probably know by now that next July 4th is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And actually, this whole year now is actually celebrating the Revolutionary War. And the fact is 250 years ago today, the Revolutionary War was being fought. Okay, and so in that, we do have Stand Up for Idaho is working with the America 250 Commission and through the state and all that. Celebrate. One of the things that we are doing is we're actually having a historical minute plus a segment on actually the Jolene Thomas show every Thursday at 5 p.m. And so I'd really appreciate people to tune into her. It's from 4 to 6 on KIDU News Radio 106.3. And just a little shout out for her. She actually got the best talk show, first place best talk show of the Idaho State Broadcasters Association. And so I'd give her a big hand for getting that award. I think it's wonderfully great. Okay, next, and Chris, if you could bring up our flag. If you'll notice, I have a flag back there, and this is a picture of it. This is a custom-created, custom-carved wood flag to help us celebrate, the America 250. And we're actually raffling this off. This is a one-of-a-kind item, and it's doing a fundraiser. Excuse me, as a fundraiser for Stand Up for Idaho. We're selling raffle tickets for $2 a piece, and we're going to sell them until July 4th of next year, and then we'll go ahead and, pull the raffle ticket and figure out who wins. So if you're interested in this thing, we'd surely appreciate it. Join the raffle and everything. It's a wonderful piece, and I think it's you can go look at it. It's set up back there, but it's just a good thing to celebrate. I think the America 250 anniversary, everything, and I say this all the time. We would not be sitting here today. I guarantee we would not be sitting here today if it wasn't for what our founders did 250 years ago. And so we need to be very appreciative of them and celebrate that. Okay, quick. Tonight we're going to talk to the mayoral candidates. Obviously, there's some more candidates, some more elections in Idaho Falls and City of Idaho Falls. But next week, we're going to have candidates for City Council seat number 2. There are actually 7 people running for that position, and we will have 6 of them here. The 7th one couldn't make it because of scheduling conflict, but he will be here 2 weeks later, I think is what it is. And so we're going to have every one of them, and we've talked to all of the City Council candidates to see if they would go ahead and come into one of these forums. And so far, we've had a good reception from everybody. So encourage everybody to come to those things, pay attention to them, because I'll say this, and you need to ask hard questions. What happens in Idaho is East Idaho. And so, whether you live in Ammon, whether you live in Swan Valley, whether you live in Rigby, or it doesn't matter, okay? Or even at Bonneville, or even Madison County, what happens in Idaho Falls affects everybody. And so about the candidates and be sure that you vote correctly. And I'll just your and your family's lives will be affected by who is elected. I guarantee that. So I appreciate that. We're going to go get started. Tonight's moderator is Jolene Thomas. And Jolene, come on up here. And she's going to tell us some of the rules. Let's give Jolene a big hand. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Jolene. We do have some rules that she's going to go over and tell you. And we do ask everybody to please abide by the rules. We'll post them up here, too. I know it's hard to see, but, it's... And we can zoom in there a little bit. We'll try to figure something out there. But let's be respectful. Okay, we've got a lot of things to do. We will stop asking questions at 8:30. Okay, just so that we all know that. If you have a question, be sure to get up and do that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jolene. I'll quit talking, and here you go. Thank you so much.
All right. Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here. And I appreciate Stand Up for Idaho, the good work they do, and for putting on this event so we can all learn more about these three mayoral candidates. So let me quickly, as Doug mentioned, go over what's going to happen tonight. So first of all, each of these candidates will have 5 minutes to introduce themselves, and that's their time to shine, to really help us understand what their vision is. And then as far as the questions, that's up to you guys. You get to ask those questions. So there's a blue line right there, a tape line. So if you'll stand behind that as you're waiting for your opportunity to ask your question, then come on up and you will have 45 seconds to ask that question. And that's important because we want to get to as many questions as we possibly can tonight. Then each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. Now, if in their response they mention another candidate by name, then that candidate is going to get a rebuttal. So we'll make sure they have a 2-minute rebuttal, make sure they have that opportunity. And Rod will be keeping time right here so that we stay on time. That's in an effort to make sure that each candidate gets their equal time. We want this to be fair. 15 seconds is the yellow card, and that means wrap it on up. So when you see the red, stop, but that yellow one is going to give you an indication that your time is coming to an end. And then the other thing that we want to be aware of is at the end of the questions, and we will wrap those up at 8:30, then each candidate is going to get an opportunity to make a final pitch, their final closing statement, and that will be 3 minutes long. Now, I want to make sure we're clear on this. As you come up and ask your question, you might be inclined to want to ask a follow-up question. That's totally fine, but we're going to need you to come back and ask that another time so that we can allow the next person. So if you have follow-ups, that's totally fine, but just one question, then go back to the back of the line. And with that, we are ready to get things started. So we'll get our candidates up here and allow them to introduce themselves. And while they're getting situated, I just want to say how incredible it is to see this huge turnout, because that just indicates that people right here in our community care about what's going on. So thank you all for taking time to come out and be part of this important conversation. All right, so a big thank you to Lisa Burtenshaw, Christian Ashcraft, and Jeffrey Alldridge. Let's give them all a big welcome. All right, so we are going to begin right down here with Lisa with her 5-minute opening.
Okay, all right. So my name is Lisa Burtenshaw. I was born in Provo, but then my parents quickly returned back to Idaho Falls. I've been 4 generations of Idaho Falls. I went to Bonneville High School, where I met my future husband. We dated through high school, and we have been married for 30 years. I have a degree in mechanical engineering, which I use every day of my life. I don't work as an engineer, but it has really benefited me in my life, and I've been very appreciative to all of the teachers and mentors. I think Idaho Falls has great schools. Even Bonneville, shout out to Bonneville High School. Great teachers there. So my husband is a dentist, and so we went to Cleveland, lived in Cleveland, and he received his degree in as a dentist. He works at Family Dental Health Center, and I am a part of that office, and I do the finances for the office. And then in 2006, I became a member of 2008, I became a member of the Idaho Falls School Board and served on the school board. It's one of my most proud accomplishments. And then the reason that I just have to be careful, 5 minutes. The reason that I am running for mayor is because of growth, plain and simple. I remember the time that the mall went to the east side of town and downtown became a little scarier. And I remember when Hit Road cut through, when Tom Campbell started to make the Greenbelt a reality. And I think it takes that kind of leadership to be able to see what is happening in the town and how we're going to have to grow through it. There's no way that we're going to be able to stop the growth. It's coming, and it is more and more, and we have some great reasons why we're growing, but we have been discovered, and so we're going to have to manage that growth. I have a plan for managing that growth, and it includes adding to the public safety. That's my first priority, making sure we have the officers and the fire department ready to go. When Doug Toomer talks about what Idaho Falls does affects the rest of the community, the rest of the valley, it's actually the rest of the valley affects what happens in Idaho Falls. We are connected, and when people come into Idaho Falls, it's increased traffic, and it is actually the Idaho Falls Police Department that responds to all of those traffic calls in the city. So we also pride ourselves on parks, and with all the growth, we need about 55 more acres in the next 5 years of park systems so that we can maintain the level of service that we currently have. We've been collecting impact fees, and so we're going to need one park over kind of by where CEI is, and we're going to need one park. We're going to use city land to build another community-style park at Sandy Downs, but it's just going to take management to do that. I also feel like it is time for the residents in this whole area. It doesn't just have to be Idaho Falls to have an indoor community center. It's something that it wouldn't be a rec center in the sense of a weight-lifting center. I think there's plenty of fitness centers around, but I do think that it's time to really get serious about a multi-generational civic center where grandparents and grandchildren can all come and be part of the community. I know that for the city of Idaho Falls, we have an aquatic center, but it is over-programmed with a lot of the high school students. And so the water tends to be too warm for the swimmers and too cold for the grandmas. I'm a grandma, and so having a community center is just top of my priority. So that's the platform that I'm running on, and I really do think that growth has to be managed. We have to know where we're at, and so we can know where we're going.
Thank you, Lisa. And Christian, we'll go ahead and give you your 5-minute opening.
All the way up. Okay. So my name is Christian Ashcraft. I was born inside of Idaho Falls, and then my parents took me out to the middle of nowhere, which we call Hamer. It's about 30 minutes north of here, give or take. And I just was out there today as well. I have a hard time staying away because my parents have a farm out there. And I was just digging potatoes for my dad earlier today, and his cousin came and is filling in for me right now, and I hope they don't break anything. So, yeah, let me just start a little bit with the issues kind of we're facing. Yes, we do face real issues here in Idaho Falls. Most of them do revolve, like Lisa Burtenshaw said, around growing pains. Housing affordability, traffic, infrastructure strain, and also, of course, everyone also worries about rising taxes. But let's be honest, every candidate up here is going to say that these are the same issues that we're all facing. I think we're all on the same page as far as what issues we have for the city of Idaho Falls. And the difference between us is not going to be just what problems we name, but it's going to be how we lead, how we manage, and ultimately what we decide to do for the community. I just want to say that where others offer maybe promises, I offer the word performance. Where others pitch dream projects, I pitch managing them with clear metrics and public approval. Where insiders may push decisions kind of in back rooms, I believe every major decision should be measured, reported, and tested against the will of the people. And here's the truth. The biggest crisis that we face in Idaho Falls isn't necessarily growth. It's the relationship that the city has with the public. A lot of decisions are made by a very small group of people in the city administration, and I'm not saying they're bad people, and I'm not saying they always make bad choices, but I do really value the public approval, especially when we make very large decisions that have really significant impacts on taxpayers and the community. For me, public approval is not an obstacle that is hindering progress, but it is the ultimate goal as to how we should lead our community. I'm the only candidate here who has 2 degrees in public management, who built a small local business from scratch, and who worked alongside 3 different city administrations. I may not be coming from a 20-year career in local government, but I've invested more hours and money into pursuing city management than the other candidates combined. I'm not a corporate executive either. I know the mayor has a lot of executive responsibilities compared to other cities here. But I have launched a business, I've led teams, and I've learned firsthand what it takes to set goals, measure progress, and take responsibility when things don't go as planned. As mayor, just a few things on my radar, things that I would like to accomplish. I would like to report goals, progress, and results quarterly, if not more, and do it in a way that residents can clearly understand and use to make a good judgment about voting and making recommendations as far as other big decisions that the city is interested in. Another thing is to treat public approval not as a nuisance, but as the ultimate measure of success. I'd like to measure and report on how much public approval we have in the major decisions that we make that affect the city. I'd also like to specifically bring the true story that lies behind every tax dollar to light for all residents to see, a report of every decision that adds up to why sometimes our taxes seem high. If a program isn't working, we'll fix it, and if a process is broken, we'll streamline it. And if leadership fails to deliver, we'll change course, even if sometimes that means coaching or replacing certain leadership. Because that's how you run a city, not with slogans, but with results. Now, my opponents will probably tell you that they care about these things too. But I just want you to ask yourself where the progress is and where the metrics are. And I just want to say that let's choose results over rhetoric. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Christian. And finally, Jeffrey Alldridge, we'll give you your 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Idaho Falls is a wonderful community. That's why people who were born here stay here, or maybe they went away for college and came back. That's why so many people decided to come here. That's why we came here, because we wanted to be a part of this community. We don't want to see it change. We don't want to see it imagined as something different. We want to make sure that it grows in a way that preserves that community character, the reason why we are all here. So my family, we chose Idaho Falls to come to, and it was the best decision we ever made in our lives. We dove in and got connected. The city has blessed us in so many ways. We've made connections and relationships with so many people that are so deep and more meaningful than we've ever had before. And we've given back and invested, serving our community in so many different realms. My wife leads the children's ministry at our church. I lead a trail life troop, training young men from 5 to 18, teaching them leadership and practical skills. My wife does the same thing with American Heritage Girls for young ladies. My family, we started a local business here in Idaho Falls. It gives our children an opportunity to learn entrepreneurship and what it means to have a business. Well, we started from nothing when we built it all up, from painting and plumbing and the whole way through. So it's a wonderful learning opportunity for them. Professionally, my vocation, my formal education is in visual communications. And I found my niche in technology. I work for a startup company and absolutely love technology. And for the last 15 years, I've been at a publicly traded company. We are a technology company that's a business-to-business company. Globally, we have about 7,000 people worldwide that work for us. And for me, I'm on the creative strategy team. So I work with the executives. I work with technology subject matter experts. I have my internal teams that I manage and external agencies that I help run. And then globally, I work with theater agencies. And it's really fun to solve problems. Our biggest thing is obviously customer satisfaction. So what I do is make sure that we are servicing the customer and ensuring that our products and services are enabling them, because it's a really competitive market. And it's wonderful to work with all these global teams and trying to solve these big problems under tight budgets, tight deadlines, with time zone differences, language differences, cultural differences. And it's a wonderful experience that's taught me how to deliver results, lead teams, huge teams, global teams, with large budgets, all with the end goal of the customer in mind. Now, there are two things that got me animated that wanted me to run for mayor. And the first one is the chaotic growth that we're all experiencing. And I think all the candidates can admit to that. The second is the breakdown of the faith and trust with the citizens of the city and the city itself. So when it comes to chaotic growth, one of the things that we have to be honest about is that this isn't organic or the free market doing its own thing. That this is, especially in the last 3 years, what we've seen comes from the comprehensive plan that the city has adopted. And that has given allowance for developers to come in and develop the way that we've been seeing since February of 2022. So this isn't something that is happening to us. We're not victims of this. We're actually complicit. The city is complicit in the way that things are being developed. Now, I'm a free market capitalist, and I want to make sure that businesses are doing the right thing. But when it comes to city development, that's the proper role of government to make sure that we are growing in the right way, because it's not just about that one property when it gets rezoned. It affects all the surrounding areas. And so that's the proper use of government to figure out what is best for the community. There's a time and place for different types of development, and our job should be to help direct that and give and provide that framework and platform for those developers to use. And so what we need to do is amend our plan to ensure that it aligns better to what the citizens actually want. We don't want to see a huge 1,000-unit apartment complex in the middle of our city, right next to established neighborhoods that have been there for decades. We can put these. So there's a time and place for this, like Snake River Landing and Jackson Hole Junction. Oh wow, coming up are perfect opportunities for that's how we can build it and create the amenities that are designed and can work for both the developers, the community, and everyone who lives here.
All right. Thank you, Jeffrey Alldridge. One other note that I want to make is that we're asking that the candidates don't interact or ask for validation from any audience members. So respond to the questions, but not trying to get any kind of validation. So we are ready to go ahead and start with the questions. So if you have a question, come on up. Let's line up. Whoever's first, come right on up to the mic. And then if you'll just line up there and wait behind the blue line. All right, you will have 45 seconds to ask the first question.
Okay. Jeff, what have you done since you were 21 years old that qualified you to serve and lead an organization the size of Idaho Falls?
You say that I'm 21 years old? What do you?
Since you were 21, what's prepared you to
since I've
lead
been
Idaho
21?
Falls?
Oh, yeah, that's great. It's all my business experience in management. So what I've been have the privilege of is developing my career as in business, and having the investment of management training and the mentorship with my executives, and being able to lead and manage these huge events and projects that are multi-million dollars that bring in hundreds of $1 million of pipeline. So it really is that business experience. And what's unique about the mayor's role here in Idaho Falls is that what most citizens care about is policy. But there's 11 departments that report to the mayor's office. And so having that strong executive experience, that business experience of running teams, hiring people, firing people, having those crucial conversations, even training people. Whenever you've trained people, it's amazing how they'll ask questions that you never thought of before, and you're like, yeah, maybe we do need to change our process. And so it's great to have that business mindset, and I'm not conformed by politics, that I can come in with a fresh view, fresh perspective. And what I want to do is make each department as effective and efficient as possible. So coming in with fresh eyes, with that business mindset, I want to give them the autonomy and opportunity for them to be effective. Is there low-hanging fruit that we can do to make them be able to provide back to the city? That's where my experience comes from, is from the business sector.
All right, thank you, Jeffrey. And next question, and while she is walking up, I just want to point out that if someone in the audience does not feel like they can physically make it up to the microphone because of some maybe health limitations, don't feel like you have to be left out. Just have somebody stand up for you, and then we will actually bring a handheld mic over to you. It's really important for us that everybody feels like they can participate. Okay,
Now,
go.
was there a card that was coming up when I'm close to the 45 seconds, did you say?
Yes,
Oh.
a yellow
So
one.
you're going to wave it? Okay.
Yep,
very
it
good,
will
'cause
be right
It is
there.
kind of long what I've got going on here. I'm going to try to be fast, but this question is for each candidate to answer. If elected mayor, are you willing to put on hold the building of apartment complexes until Imagine IEF comprehensive plan can be reevaluated to fit Idaho Falls and not a larger metropolis like LA or New York? With the following thoughts: consider the height of apartment complexes for the surrounding buildings, requiring developers to put a buffer zone such as a park between it and the neighborhood instead of building right on. Prepare the streets. Have the developers plan for 3 parking spots instead of parking on our street. And then have the city and mayor look at the development with the eye of, would I want to live next to it? I'd like to know what you all feel about that.
Okay, and we will start.
How about, could she read those three? Okay.
Could she read what?
I was trying to get all of her questions. It's good. It's okay.
Okay. We're going to start right here with Christian on this one.
You want me to ask the question
I
again?
tried to write them down. I'm okay.
Okay.
'Cause
If you want to,
it's-
maybe just the 3 points.
Okay, so I'd like to know what you are willing to do to put a hold on apartment complex building until you've reevaluated the Imagine IF comprehensive plan so it fits Idaho Falls in regarding to parking, height, size, greenery around it to protect neighborhoods it's built by?
Okay, thank you. So Christian, we'll begin with you on this one.
So I think the question about holding off is probably a good question. It's something I would honestly, we have to do some research and work with the staff and these developers to figure out, okay, well, what would be the impacts if we were to hold off? What would be the financial impacts for developers or the city? I just realized that it's a little complex, and putting essentially a moratorium on building could have pretty serious implications for different people involved. So that would be my first step, is kind of what would be the issues or things that could come up. Then kind of getting into the specific requests that you're having. I know the city already does have certain requirements as far as buffer zones or certain beautification requirements that they have for developers. And, you know, if you've got a specific question about a specific development and you're saying, well, this doesn't seem like it has the appropriate buffers to me, or I don't see, like, something seems wrong about it, I think that would be kind of a unique case that I would probably sit down with you and possibly the Wade Sanner over here, but and talk about, okay, well, what is it? Do we have requirements there? What are they? And, you know, is there something that needs to change? And could it be changed quickly? How long would that process take to reestablish that plan? I think that would be my first step going that direction. I think it would have to be pretty significant of an ordeal to justify a moratorium, especially depending on how long that might last.
All right, thank you. And let's go to Jeffrey, and then back down to Lisa.
Yeah, I think we actually do have to pause Imagine IF until we can get a little bit control, because where the city's influence is before the zoning is approved. Once the zoning is approved, the city has no influence anymore. And so we can't undo that. Once that has been done, we can't undo that. So we need to make sure that we're being strategic with what we're approving. And I don't think it would take that long. Obviously, there's stuff that's already in process, and that's going to be a concern, and we need to be aware of that, and we want to be good partners with the people who already have expectations. But we need to make sure that we get back on track with what aligns and is most beneficial for the quality of life of the citizens who already live here.
Okay. All right. I think that it is not the popular answer, and I know that in the room. But the property rights that have been established, these gentlemen are both right. They have been established, and they have the right to build in that zone, in that residential zone. I would absolutely be willing to look at our ordinances and look at the buffer zone and say, like, oh, what is, you know, how much more would the buffer take between, you know, for every foot up, we're 2 feet out. What if we were up 1, out 3? What would that look like? I think that that is absolutely within the realm of the city council, the mayor. Those are the kind of practical answers to get. I think one thing also to remember is that Idaho Falls is not an island, and that what is happening in like out by Beach's Corner and out in the periphery in Bonneville County, it's actually is what is affecting Idaho Falls the most. That's what is bringing traffic in to Idaho Falls. That is the wrong location for big apartment complexes. People have to come into town for everything if you live on the fringes of Idaho Falls. It's 2 or 3 trips into town for every amenity. And when you look at residential neighborhoods, apartments, I absolutely think, you know, let's look at the setback and the buffer zone, but apartments belong in urban areas where they can get amenities. They are residents. I lived in an apartment for 10 years. It was my home. And when you can't afford to live in a house, then I lived in an apartment. And eventually I was able to buy a home. But it is a residential neighborhood, and when the immediate construction goes up, it's a big deal. But as grass and plants come in, you start to know that Oh, actually, these are my neighbors.
All right. Thank you so much. Go ahead. Come on up.
Candidates, thank you so much for your time. Starting to hear some rumblings around different organizations here in the state that have treated the idea of property tax. I'd like to hear from each of you. Florida is a no state income tax state, and they're entertaining adopting, or eradicating, I should say, property taxes completely, and are looking to manage the finances and needs of their civic duties with just what they get otherwise. In particular, I'd like to hear your thoughts on if somebody has paid off their house, should they be subject to property tax, and or if you've retired, should you be subject to property tax? Thank you. And
we'll start with you, Jeffrey, for this one.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. What's really fascinating, if you look at our budget, our city budget's about $389 million. And it's only 16% of the budget comes from property taxes, which is about $48 million. And it's only a small percentage comes in from property taxes. And so if we're smart about it, I think it's definitely something that we should entertain, because that's a weird liability and a tax that you have in perpetuity for property that, especially if you've already paid it off and you're retired, that you still have to keep paying. And so I think it's definitely worth looking into. This is much a broader issue than just at the city level, but I think it's a great idea, especially when you put it in context of it's only that 16% of what our city budget is.
All right. And we'll go with Lisa and then Christian.
Sure. So this is a state level kind of issue, but here's what I think we should do in the city of Idaho Falls. I think that we should really push forward and try and get a local option tax. I think that our property taxes can be stabilized. Right now, people generally think, oh, we come into Idaho Falls and they receive the sales tax from it, and that's not actually accurate. Most states do have a local option tax, and that's a way to help stabilize your taxes. Right now, with all of our home values going up and the commercial going up and then the commercial going down, we really have wild fluctuations. The state of Idaho only allows cities to collect property tax, and if your bigger hubs were able to also collect on a local option tax, that would stabilize and then also allows the city to reduce taxes. Right now, the city does provide the bulk of the amenities for the entire county. The aquatic center, the ice hockey rink, the parks. It's really all on the burden of the taxpayers of Idaho Falls. And so if we had a local option tax, maybe a 2-cent local option tax, it would help smooth out the tax burden for the citizens of Idaho Falls.
So yeah, this kind of sounds to me that the question is not so much how much taxes are being paid, but who's paying the taxes, because the city's budget is going to be the city's budget, and they're going to collect it from the tools. They can, I'm just saying, the savings and cutting is like another conversation. But like Lisa said, a lot of the taxing structure is set by the state, and there is that local option tax that has been on the table that essentially would mean, okay, could we vote and have an additional tax that would tax more some of the people that come and visit here that maybe don't live here, and perhaps that would kind of lighten the load on us local residents, especially when the economy's good, and we could use that for some particular purposes. So that's an avenue that we'd have to work with the state to explore. As far as like retirement or people who have fully paid off their properties, I think that would be an interesting question. You're choosing how to divvy up the taxes. And the current tool that I'm aware of that the city of Idaho Falls could use, I don't know if it has really been used, but they could technically create a sort of tax relief program for any particular group, like retired people, homeowners. If they chose, they would just have to pull those funds from their own general budget. That's one thing the state allows them to do legally. It hasn't been done, but it's something the city council has the power to do. State also has a tax relief program for people on fixed incomes as well. So I think I would explore a lot of those options and that low-hanging fruit first before going into pretty significant things through the state, but not necessarily opposed to talking about them. I'm interested to talk about any ideas that other states have chosen, and if that would be something that we'd want to talk with the state. We'd get there when we get there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for taking questions. I'm surprised to see you all here. These can be quite brutal, so I applaud you for that. So speaking of those multi-hundred unit plan developments, some of you might recall the Bridge to Nowhere, bigger election, we're talking presidential election where that came up, but Bridge to Nowhere has happened here, right? So in my neighborhood, there's one route in and out from the main collector road, which makes this huge neighborhood already, hundreds of homes, a cul-de-sac, okay, which is, it's not good, right? That's not something you should see. Well, there's now a proposal for several hundred more apartment buildings in this essentially a cul-de-sac. And so you're talking about heavy trucks and these future residents having one way in and out of this large area. You know, what's the deal? Why is that about to be approved? That's kind of laughable, right? Thank you.
And for this one, we'll go ahead and start with Lisa.
Sure. I mean, without knowing the details, I would say that that does not sound like the kind of development that we would approve or put into Idaho Falls. We are obviously going to have all of the fire routes. So I would be interested to know where that is at. I do know that once it leaves, like the city council, once something has been zoned for that doesn't come back to the city council to say, oh, here's how many apartments have been approved. It's just the zoning of the piece of property. So this would be something that we would definitely want to have you contact any member of the city council or the current mayor's office and talk about, because you've got to have proper fire access, all of that stuff, all of the collectors. It's not intended, and I have voted against these kind of projects when apartments aren't placed on the roads that are busy, that have local amenities. I'll vote against it every time. So we can talk afterwards about where that's at, and we can get you some connected so that you'll know exactly what is coming in.
All right. And let's go to Jeffrey on this one.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting you say like the Bridge to Nowhere. I know quite a few sidewalks to nowhere that have been developed in the city that the developer has to put in the sidewalk and then it goes and it just ends. Where we decide to zone and approve is incredibly important. There's areas that are approved that are butted up right against county property. And the problem with that is a lot of these county roads were only 50 feet wide, because that's what they needed to be. They were agricultural county roads. Now the city wants to have 100 feet. But if you build an apartment complex right next to, on the other side, county land, well, middle of the road, you have 25 feet, and then you have somebody else's property that's in the county, and you have nothing you can do about it. And so you start boxing yourself in of like what you can even do to help improve the infrastructure. If you wanted to expand that road, you can't. You're stuck because it has to be in cooperation with the county and somebody else's property who's not part of the city. So it's important for the city to consider when, where, and how we grow. It's not that we're against growth, but we just need to be smart and strategic about how we do it, so we don't box ourselves in to these bridges to nowhere or these sidewalks to nowhere.
Okay, so I'm sure that your specific situation would be very specific, and it would be a good thing to sit down and talk to the people who are aware of the project and kind of see where the disconnect is and what's kind of happening there. But I'll maybe start with kind of just generally when it comes to growth and development and the decision to regulate development. My personal stance, although I do think mayors should be pretty, I guess, just facilitate everybody's opinion, not that they should push an agenda. But my stance when it comes to regulating development is generally that because it is taking away somebody's property right and potentially devaluing their property, and we can't take that lightly. But there are kind of four areas that first come to my mind of what are reasonable reasons to modify their property rights. First is safety. Obviously, you don't want to cause any harm, and you want to prevent harm. That could be traffic related or construction related or other things. Health, pollution, and sound. You got to have buffers and things that make sure that the neighboring hoods aren't affected health-wise. Logistics, that's fire, are all the things in the things that we have to use to serve those areas properly. Can they get there effectively? And the fourth one is aesthetics, and that one may not sound like as big, but it is important that the city does have a good aesthetic that doesn't cause the overall city to kind of lose value, right? There is a public interest there, and so that comes to the beautification part. Now, with your specific situation, I think that this kind of goes to a little bit of that trust with the public and that communication with the public, because I do think that sometimes, especially when a project is partway done, you are kind of confused by some of the things you see. And having a lot of that communication up front and being very involved with the public that are going to be affected is hugely important during the administration of that project.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Are we allowed to rebut each other's, or just only if we're called
Only
out
if you're
by name?
Called out by
Okay,
name.
all right, thank
Yeah.
you.
So, but you can work that in
will.
at some
Okay,
other
thank you.
point. Go right ahead with your question.
First, I want to thank you for having this. We don't always get one of these every time there's an election, and it is much more educational to talk to you, to hear from you, than to try and guess. So I think this is great. So I've had to write my question down because it would come out of my brain immediately if I didn't. So my question for all three of you is that I'm sure everyone knows that the mayoral and city council positions are nonpartisan. And I'd like to ask if you'd all commit to that and to not allowing any partisan groups or organizations attempt to pressure you into any partisan related issues or decisions.
I don't believe you've had a first chance, Christian, so let's go ahead and let you start out.
I think this goes into a lot of what I kind of said in the beginning, where I feel like we do need to use the metrics and the results that are to like follow the projects, right? We need to have that public approval and kind of an established amount of public approval that we kind of use before we make a decision. I think it becomes easy to be partisan, or not necessarily on purpose, but sometimes partisan items get into the mix because there's just a few people in the room in the city council with, their friend circle, and sometimes decisions get made that way. And really the mechanism to kind of deflect that is to make sure that we have really solid public engagement efforts and that everybody has a voice at the table. And I think the city's definitely made some attempts. It's a challenge to get people involved, especially when you're talking about way in advance before they're impacted. And so I do kind of feel for them. They have that challenge, but I do think there's a lot of things that could be done better to get more of that voice. And, the city council could choose, this is probably something I would bring to them, but they could choose to say, hey, these certain thresholds, something that's going to have a significant impact to tax base or, big significant decisions. We have a threshold that says, if we're going to make a decision that big, let's say that we have to get this much kind of public approval. And, how we're going to do that. We need to have more people than just the city council to go for making that decision before we feel comfortable moving on with that. Even if it's legal for them to do so without that public approval, I just think it is really important for them to know that it's not just in their small friend group that they feel like it's good, but it's really a nonpartisan, well-spread thing that the people want.
So are you committing to it yourself?
Yeah, I'm committed to nonpartisanship.
Okay, Lisa, let's go with you.
I'm absolutely committed to nonpartisanship in municipal elections. We do not want to be held accountable to a party boss when it comes to what is affecting the citizens of Idaho Falls the most, which is health and safety. Even though it isn't thought about very often, the city of Idaho Falls does have a wastewater treatment plant We supply the well water to all of the residents, the road system, the police, the fire. We don't want to have someone higher in a political party trying to influence how to make those kind of health and safety decisions. It needs to come down to the what's best for the citizens of Idaho Falls. So I think partisanship just drives a wedge in there. When it comes to being able to have specific input from the residents, there is a definite need for more public participation. We would love to have a room like this during our public hearings, because we do have public hearings on the budget. We have public hearings for every zone change that have to follow really specific rules about, when you can take public input, because there are laws that are associated with that. This would have been a fabulous crowd to have had at our budget meeting. And so we will continue to just try and get that out. Those are our biggest budget is the budget hearing. That's when all of the decisions are made. And, it takes months to get there, but then we have the budget hearing, and we have been influenced many times when one or two people show up and really are pushing forward for something. So yes, nonpartisan is the way for cities to be.
All right, thank you. And Jeff?
Yep. Yeah, that's an easy one. Yeah, I will commit to not being partisan. That's the reason why these city elections are nonpartisan is because the issues that the mayor and city council has to face are very different from even a state rep or a senator. They're very different from national politics. And so we need to make sure that we're addressing what is needed for the constituents. Now, with that said, what we do need to do is restore that faith and trust with the residents so that we are being better informed, so that we're taking that input. So we're not just assuming what is best for you, but actually hearing from you as you guys are the best, the best at knowing what is best for the city. As I've been going through this campaign, it's amazing how people have come and provided nuance, the things I didn't expect before. There was a young lady, and I know there's a lot of people who are upset about short-term rentals, and I get it. And one of the things that it's difficult is that we have to abide by state laws, and so that affects here in the local ones. But there was a young lady who came to me and said, when my husband and I first got married, we bought a house that was bigger because we knew we were going to have kids and grow into it. But it was going to be a tough one to pay the mortgage. But we bought a bigger house for that future growth, and we rented out the rooms, especially to people who were working at INL, who were coming out. And that was a way for them to offset their mortgage. So if it wasn't for that, if you limited short-term rentals, for example, that would affect her. And it was one of those nuanced things that I hadn't even considered. And it's like, wow, that's very different if there is an owner on premise, right? Versus somebody who might have an investment property. They live in Phoenix, but they have no idea that every weekend there's a party going on at their Airbnb that is affecting neighbors, and they have no idea. So we want to do is make sure that you as the consultants, as the citizens of the community have so much input to help influence policy, not by parties.
All right, thank you.
All right, candidates, thank you for taking my question and taking the time to be here. This is really how the process should be, and I appreciate hearing your perspectives. I have a question for all three of you, though I'll preface it. I'm a longtime citizen of Idaho Falls. I'm raising a family here. I work in the city. I was born and raised in this area. I try to be very informed on the issues. I often will watch or attend city council meetings. Probably one of the only people outside of our city government who has actually read the city budget. In short, I've tried to engage with our city government multiple times over the last 3 or 4 years. And with the exception of Jim Francis, I have had little to no engagement from our mayor, city council members, including you, Lisa. My question is this. For Lisa, I've sent emails, I've tried to reach out to you, never once have you responded. How do you justify that lack of engagement? And my question for Jeff and Christian how would you foster better engagement with the citizens of Idaho Falls if elected? Thank you.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I would absolutely apologize for that. I really do try to answer all of my emails. We do get several, and I really have made an honest effort to get out in the public and answer questions. I give my cell phone out regularly, so I do apologize on that. Here's the other thing that I do think that as I've been listening to throughout this campaign, one thing that people do want, and I'm absolutely committed to this, is they want more information about the city. They want to know, they want information the way that they are used to getting information, which is real-time kind of information. I think that we can do a better job getting AI onto our platforms so that you can ask a question and get that question answered. I think, wait, because right now what's happening is you're just being sent to a website, and people absolutely engage with people, but a lot of people just want information. And so for sure, I'm not saying don't call. I'm saying that there is also technology for people to know what is getting rezoned, when is my street getting plowed, when are the leaf cleanup coming. That is something that the city can, instead of sending you to the website for a plan, that's how people are used to engaging. But I'm always open, and so I apologize if you don't feel like I have been responsive to you.
Thank you. Let's go to Christian for this one.
I feel like I have seen kind of the same thing, working for the city of Idaho Falls, or just kind of in my own personal just attempts to kind of be involved. And, I think if I were elected mayor, there's some things that I learned actually quite a bit from my data science minor and my bachelor's degree. Not super relevant, but I learned a few things in there about like engaging with the people. And one of my professors, I just don't even know how he did it with like a programming class. He had just office hours every week, 3 times, few hours. Any student could just go in there. And it wasn't even just limited to like one. It was like he'd have like 6 students in his office, and he'd like be like, okay, working with each one of them. And he loved it, absolutely would do it every time, and never saw him have like, he wasn't tired. It was just, he was actively engaged the whole time. And I think a lot of what people do crave is like a face-to-face interaction. Even in the light of like Charlie Kirk, I think having like platforms like that available to people, as much as they're willing to take advantage of those, to just interact with the mayor, and I would encourage city council members who are elected to also do so. I've seen a lot of administrators from the city have forums where they face a lot of people regularly to explain the nuances. But I haven't seen a lot of elected officials being really, putting themselves out there, live Q&A all the time. Not just when there's an election, but like when you're just all through the year having opportunities as people want to take advantage of them. So that's me.
Yeah, open office hours are huge. We do that all the time in business, but we need to make sure that there's less friction for the process for people to engage. And so finding opportunities for meetings and engagement that aren't during people's normal work hours, right? Even if that means that we have to extend our time so we can make it available to you guys, right? It's not worth saying, hey, come 10 o'clock on Tuesday, in the middle of your work day. That's the middle of my work day, but it's the middle of your work day. So we need to make sure it's as accessible as possible. And we can start to really build trust. But what we need to do is communicate on platforms that people are already consuming information. There's many communities who already do this, where they'll have just an infographic of saying, hey, this is what the upcoming city council meeting, this is what they're going to be voting on and talking about, or the next working session. And then let's also make that, rather than rely on the website for everything, we can use these tools. Other communities do this. I don't know if we're purposely choosing not to, but let's simulcast this out to the YouTube channel. So you subscribe to the city's YouTube channel, and when it's live, no matter what it is, if it's planning and zoning, or Board of Adjustments or a city council meeting. It's live. You can see it. You can watch it there. And then afterwards, if you miss it, it's easily in a playlist, accessible, where people are already consuming information. And then after these meetings, we can have a follow-up infographic posted on our social channels, where people are already consuming information that says, hey, this is what the votes were. This is what, and then this is the decisions that are coming out, and this is how it's going to go. So we just need to be smart about it. And I think those little steps where we just kind of get rid of the friction to the process to allow people to engage will erode that mystery and build these relationships.
Thank you. Go ahead and come on up.
It's the apartments. I was watching the city in the spring of this year, and I noticed that apartments started going up, and more apartments going up, to the point where it was like a ripple in the fabric of reality. There was too many apartments. So I called up the city planning and zoning people and said, well, where's all this money coming from and who's doing it? And they didn't know anything about anything. I mean, we don't have anything to do with that, they said. And I went, okay. So time goes on, and thank you. There's no changes in the infrastructure around all these apartments. So we're going to put all these people in here, no traffic lanes, no stoplights. So we're putting people in these apartments without cars, 15-minute cities. The city didn't ask us about that. They didn't tell us they were going to do it. In fact, when I asked them about it, they stonewalled us. Is this how you people want to run a city government? Shouldn't the voters have a say in this?
All right. Christian?
I think this definitely goes back to kind of talking about getting that public engagement, and at the right time. You know, making sure that engagement is ahead of the problem when people have the opportunity to put their voices in and influence decisions that are made, rather than once they're feeling impacts and seeing things they don't like. And that's definitely, you know, I would want to run a city where people are there, have a seat at the table to help influence what goes forward. Not only to give them a voice and have them help shape our city, but also to help educate them on the complexities and nuances that go into it too. Because as the public is more engaged and involved, over time they become more and more equipped to actually give input to the city and be involved and make a difference and serve in roles like political office maybe in the future. So I think I would definitely encourage people to participate early on, but the question is how? How do you make people get engaged really early on? And, you know, I did experience some instances while I was working with the city, not necessarily with with candidates, but or elected officials, but with certain people who had the view that the public approval was an obstacle. And it was almost like they didn't want to bring things up because they didn't want to ruffle feathers. And even in a meeting after I was kind of asking questions on behalf of a business for downtown parking, so happens, a few years ago, I was actually kind of reprimanded afterwards for, you know, ruffling feathers. And they'd been working on this for years, and they didn't, you know, and to me that culture is not acceptable. And you've got to be seeking public approval. And that's it.
Right. Jeffrey, let's go with you.
Yeah, that's it's kind of disappointing. During that time when the comprehensive plan, Imagine IF, was being developed, it was during that 2021 era where there was that huge break in trust with, and even the access that the citizens had with the government. And so when they reached out, because they're doing their due diligence, for, at the time, a city of about 67,000, they got less than 400 respondents for their comprehensive plan, or 0.48% of the population. And so that's the kind of engagement that is unfortunate, where that's how we can, as the citizens are going one way and the city government is choosing to go another way, we start to build that delta. And then we need to, the city really needs to lean back towards the direction that the citizens want to go. And we need to restore that trust and really get that engagement, and not just ask the engagement just to do what they were going to plan on doing anyway. Agnew Beck was the agency that was helping with the comprehensive plan. They're not from here. Do you think they care now what is happening to Idaho Falls? Like, their job is done. But you guys have to live with everything that the comprehensive plan has done since 2022. And so we just need to make sure that we're engaging people earnestly and actually receiving that information to make decisions, right? Not just check a box, yep, we got enough respondents that we qualify.
So the comprehensive plan does not have the effect of law. The comprehensive plan says where, kind of where is the city growing? And if we have been found, how are we going to help manage the growth? Oftentimes we think about our rights, but our rights are also limited by our neighbors' rights. And our neighbors also have property rights in the way that we have property rights. And so it is always walking that fine balance between our rights and the rights of our neighbors. And one thing that I have noticed is that oftentimes when the public wants to engage, it's when their neighbor's property is being affected and it's going to affect them. And so they'll come to engage in that moment. But it is at that time where their neighbors who own the property, their rights do become a little higher. Now, there are some places that I absolutely do not believe apartments belong. Apartments don't belong near industrial zones. They don't belong on the fringes. And when development comes in, the developer pays for the streets and the sidewalks. The city doesn't want to pay for sidewalks. The residents shouldn't have to pay for new development. Developers need to pay for the impact of development. And that's why we have impact fees, so that when developers come in, they pay per door, and that's how we're going to be able to grow through this. There isn't a way for us to stop the people from coming here. Even within this panel, these are new people are here to our town. Yeah.
That is exactly one of my questions. Impact fees. I want to know, are impact fees being diverted from the site of the development? For example, the one I wanted to talk about is 25th and Holmes. I've not seen anything happening to that street, and I don't know, you may know the number of apartments. I've been told 680. So if there's 3 cars per apartment, each morning at 8 a.m., 1,800 new cars are going to be on the road soon, and coming out in the morning and going home at night. But we're still working on a 2-lane, 25-mile-an-hour road for 25th and Holmes, and so it's going to crunch. As far as impact fees, did they put any greenery? I not saw any greenery for that division at all. Just 4-story apartments next to houses.
Jeffrey, we'll start with you.
So one thing I was surprised at is that impact fees are new to this area. They only started in May of 2022. And right now, currently, it's about $6,400 to $6,800 for single-family units for impact fees, and it's about $2,800 per unit for high density. So I'm not sure how many units there are in that area between Holmes and 25th, but you can imagine 680 times 2,800. That's how much money is being collected on impact fees. Now, those are earmarked for public services. So you have police, fire, public works, but then it's also earmarked for other things like Parks and Rec. And what's wild is in the revision document of the impact fees, the plan, there is a 10-year plan to collect fees that are come from development to invest in Sandy Downs. And I love Sandy Downs, but it's so bizarre to me that if you're building a whole development that is on Holmes and 25th, why are you collecting money from there and then using it to develop parks over there? And so if you're going to collect it, which is great, if you're going to collect it for Parks and Rec, then yeah, let's improve the park that's right next to where that's going to be mostly impacted by the development. Development fees should be targeted closest to where the development is happening.
All right. And go with Lisa.
Sure. So there's some nuances to those impact fees. We have to add land to the park system. So it's not for Parks and Rec. It's to add land into the park system. And so there isn't land. The community park has already been developed. And so we need an additional community park. So it'd be similar to a Toffus Park. Similar, it's just another big regional park. It's a community park, so that people who live in Ivywood, they're also new residents. So Ivywood and right around the dunes, you need a collection of the money in order to actually build a park big enough for a regional park. And so, yes, there would be, so all of that development to the south, we would have a regional community park. And then everything to the north, we would have another regional community park. The city, in order to be able to afford to have someone come out and do maintenance, you don't want a 1 acre piece of grass. You want to be able to have access to parks, and that is how impact fees were intended, is so that you collect them until you have enough money to actually build a park that has value to the city and not just value to the people who are right around where it's going to be impacted.
Right. Thank you.
All right. So, I mean, I would imagine that when they created the law, they probably did not want to create too many difficulties for themselves to not be flexible with the money, because sometimes you need to be able to be flexible with the money. So I doubt there's anything code-wise that says they have to move it, that you have to use it right there. But administratively, with your policy and procedure, you can definitely have like a priority to say, hey, okay, we collected a bunch of impact fees from this area. Where can we kind of invest this to best alleviate, well, what is the actual impacts from that area that we're trying to alleviate? And there might be some, with issues with timing where, the opportunity to arise to put something right next to those apartments or to help with impact in that close by in that neighborhood may not come right at the same time as a development. They might be able to put impact fees into it in a year or a year and a half, or depending on how other projects are. So there are some logistics, but this kind of goes back to, is there that communication with the public? Are you, because the public wants to know if you are just kind of erroneously saying, all right, we got all these fees that we used, because it creates an impact, but then we just kind of used it for what we wanted. I mean, the community doesn't want that to happen. So there kind of needs to be just that feedback loop of communication to help build that trust and confidence that administrators and the city council are using those funds to best address the impact, because that's why the impact fees are created. But yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. Like, they want to be flexible, but they should use those impact fees to address the impacts that are created. But to help educate people through the nuances, they just got to have that communication, that trust built with the public.
Thank you, Christian. And Lisa, let's start with you on the next one after.
Okay, so can you tell me if Imagine IF and what I've seen on your website, Lisa, if bikers and making it important it's a high priority in the Imagine IF and also in your campaign to make it so that people can bike to work and bike or walk to work and things like that. And if you really feel like that's feasible in this community with the weather that we experience, and just what your two thoughts are, Jeff and Christian, about that.
Okay, so I don't think that people are planning to, I mean, as their mode of transportation is biking to work. I think that we need to have connectivity, and as our traffic becomes worse in, Idaho Falls, I think that there are pathways for connectivity. I think, along the canal trails, connecting neighborhoods to neighborhoods without having to go out onto major busy roads. I think
And that's for bikers and walkers?
For bikers and walkers, that would be, that's been a hallmark of the city of Idaho Falls. Idaho Falls has been built on neighborhoods. On neighborhoods, we have neighborhood schools, neighborhood churches, neighborhood parks, and I don't want to see that specialness be taken away from Idaho Falls. We have to build in neighborhoods, and we have to be able to connect those neighborhoods. And so to be able to connect those neighborhoods through biking and walking paths is absolutely the way that I want to see Idaho Falls continue. Otherwise, we're going to lose something really special, and we're just going to become too big and not connected, and we won't have neighborhoods.
All right, thank you. And we'll go with you, Christian.
So when I was working for the city of Orem and I was living in the city of Provo, I would bike to work. And there's a big hill going up from Provo to Orem. And so sometimes I'd be ambitious and I'd bike like the whole, I don't remember, it might have been like 8 miles or something, but sometimes I'd also get on the bus because they actually had a bus that I could put bikes and they could hang bikes on. So I do appreciate people who do think about cyclists. And I will say when I moved here, I worked for the city, which wasn't that far away from my house, and I did not bike there all the time. And the big difference for me was basically the roads and feeling about that safety. There's just not very many cyclists that are commuting to work all the time here. And you feel safer if there's more people biking, because then you're like, okay, I think people are aware of cyclists and they know what to do when they see them. So I think that it is something that we have to be considerate of the biking system. Now, I will say for commuting, the biking paths probably does not answer commuting for cyclists. It is great for leisure, and some people might be able to commute on them. But for most of the rest of the city, a commuter is not going to bike on those kinds of paths. And, safety is important. And this doesn't just go for cyclists, but any other kind of like scooter type transportation that people might start using in the future. We need to be aware of that and definitely plan accordingly. It's kind of a difficult process to see, okay, how much can we invest in this, because it's expensive for infrastructure, to make sure people are safe without going overboard and having stuff that people just aren't going to use. And so you kind of got to get some testing and research and stuff, and that's where we need the public input to really help us to understand, okay, well, is this something people are interested in? How much people would actually use this? What kind of options do we have that are really low cost if there's not going to be very many people that use it? That's kind of my take on the cycling.
Cool. Yeah, in the Imagine IF's own data, it says that less than 1% of the population bikes to work. And in the health section for Imagine IF, it talked about there was two things. There was an overarching goal of making it more accessible for biking and walking for your daily needs. And so the first one was that for like making it more accessible for bikes, and the second one was to work towards becoming a 15-minute city. Under health, by the way, not even transportation. And so biking as recreation is awesome, but biking is not a solution because it's not realistic for our community. So it's not that we don't want to invest in it. We want to make the right investment for the actual need. So it's like less than 1% actually use it, and that's probably during 6 months out of the year, not the other 6 months. That's not a solution for traffic. And so we just need to be realistic and confident about that. Like our community is unique. Every community is unique. And so we need to make sure that the policies are not idealistic, but realistic, that are actually meeting the real needs of the community. Because that's what we should be doing as a city, is to provide those services to make the quality of life better and be good stewards of the resources that we're given, and not look for new opportunities for revenue to put into builds that are the nice to haves.
Go ahead. Come on up.
This question is for each one of you, and the question is kind of two parts. One is, how do you support private industry within the city? And another follow-up is it appropriate to provide a service that can be met privately, such as the greater IF transit? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Let's start with you, Jeff.
Yeah. So what we need to do as a city, because this is what we, as I've been in this campaign, I've heard from so many business people about how businesses want to work in IF, but we don't make it easy for them to establish here. And so what happens is they end up in Ammon, right? On our border, Hit Road, 25th, like we pay all the way up to the sidewalk. And so we're maintaining all of that, and yet on the east side, Ammon is collecting all that money and pushing all that traffic on our side. What we need to do as a city is a red carpet treatment. How can we help people get to yes? If people want to invest in our city for private industry, how can we help them? Not have them, you know, hey, there's a number of hoops that you need to jump through, and hopefully when you got to the last hoop, you can come back and we'll make sure, that goalpost moved a little bit. If we can't get a pumpkin patch to get a permit, we're doing something wrong. So the other thing that we need to be careful about is that we're not competing or providing a service that can be better done by the private sector. So gift is a great opportunity for people who have special use cases, right, who can benefit from that. But when it costs $2.83 million for gift a year, and they did 89,000 boards. Now, I don't know if a board is 5 people getting on the bus is one board, or if that's 5 boards. I don't know. But if you take the $2.83 million divided by 89,000, that's $33 per trip that gift costs, right? And let's say someone who needs that because they need to get to the doctor's office or a pharmacy. If they need to get to the pharmacy to get their prescription, and it's in Ammon, because Burlington is in Ammon, they can't use gift to get there. So are there solutions where we could partner and use our money wisely to make sure everybody has the same accessibility, but use the private sector as an opportunity so that we don't have liability and overhead debt?
Kristen? Yeah.
I definitely agree with the red carpet, you know, making it one-stop shop, just making it easy for businesses to kind of at least dive into the possibilities of what they can do in Idaho Falls. I was kind of in that seat for a little while, and I will say one of the biggest challenges, at least at this time, is that businesses will look and say, your taxes are this, and the county just that far away, taxes are this. Convince me why I should spend so much more every year to be in City of Idaho Falls. And now I'm not necessarily like, I don't think that we really need to super compete with neighboring governments and be like, that project's mine, that project's mine. The economy is an organism that doesn't really like just guide. It doesn't respect borders. But I do think that we have to have a good relationship with the county to kind of figure out, okay, well, how is it that we can address this border thing and make sure that things are just taken care of square, and then how can we also make sure that our taxes do kind of actually become competitive over time is a big deal. As far as competing with private industry, so gift is kind of a public transportation-ish. It's innovative, a little different, but we do know that basically all public transportation in the United States does cost a lot of money. And primarily they do it because businesses aren't going to make money doing it. And so they don't provide that service from the private sector. So it is kind of acceptable to me for the government to say, we're going to provide this service if it's needed, if the private sector will not provide it. So the question for Idaho Falls is it needed? That's something that takes time and evaluation. And then I think it's just something to think about. Food for thought is recreation center. same thing. You're going to compete, and you've got to collaborate with the private sector enough ahead of time that you can maybe find a solution that benefits both people instead of just creating direct competition and taking their revenue.
And before we get Lisa's response, I just want to remind everybody, let's refrain from any kind of personal attacks or insinuated attacks, just to make it a more level and fair playing ground. So, Lisa, go right ahead.
Okay. So I do think that the City of Idaho Falls, we have 11 departments, and those 11 departments are way too siloed. It is a big reason why, as I sit on the city council, that I have decided that I really do want to be the mayor of Idaho Falls, because we have to break down those silos. When someone comes to the city, they're expecting an answer from a city, and they shouldn't have to have the org chart to be able to know where they're going to get their answer from. Who are they getting their answer from? It's from the city. We have to be way more collaborative within the departments so that it isn't just 11 silos. So yes, I think that the support for private industry, are you looking for a building permit? Are you looking for just a business permit? There has to be we have to break down those silos. And that is going to be the job of the next mayor. It's going to have to be to get those silos broken down. As far as when it comes to gift, I do agree that we need to have, some kind of public transportation. When people come in to testify, and they do come to testify about gift, it's mostly a state-funded program with the city paying a share of it. The number of disabled people that benefits, the number of elderly people, it really is a benefit to the city. If you look at, the things that the city does provide that we don't recoup costs from, we have a zoo, we have an aquatic center, we have all kinds of departments where we collect a fee, but it doesn't cover the whole cost. And in this case, this micro public transportation is really serving a marginalized part of our community, and it's serving them really well.
Oh.
Hey there. This is a question for all three of you, and it's a two-part question. On the first part is, do you support President Trump's law and order and immigration policies, and are you willing to cooperate with ICE?
And we'll start with you, Christian, on this one.
I think this kind of goes to do we commit to be nonpartisan a little bit? And obviously, I'm just saying a little bit. Hold on. Let me explain. Nonpartisan, I do think, partially means that we as a city are going to respect the federal government when they create rules, and we're gonna collaborate with public officials like ICE and organizations that are directed by the federal government. There needs to be that collaboration, and the city shouldn't make it a standoff between them and the federal government just to push an agenda. So that's what I mean. It kind of goes into nonpartisan a little bit, and so I would obviously respect those. Me, generally, I won't say I know every single detail that lies behind his law and order plan, but I do personally believe that we should have a legal structure and process for immigration, and we should respect the legal structure and process. I think, it kind of, I don't know, to me it just kind of goes without saying that you should have, if you have rules and policies, you should try to stand by them and respect them. So that's my response.
And let's go to Lisa.
Okay. So the city will absolutely arrest people who are breaking the law in our city, and then and the police are very well trained. They perform their job well, and then they will take them to the county, and the county is actually the jurisdiction that has the jail. And that is where they would interact with the ICE officials, is once they get into the county jail and they get processed. So that is something that the city follows, law and order, respects law and order, and then they would become processed at the county jail. So that would really be a county kind of question, but no doubt the police will arrest people regardless of their legal immigration status. And you break the law in the city of Idaho Falls, and there would be an arrest made regardless of that status, and then they would be processed through the county.
Okay, thank you.
My answer is yes.
All right, and come on up and ask your question.
All right, so all of you guys have answered questions regarding to engagement from the community tonight. And so I feel like one of the most important demographics you can get engaged is young adults and students. So what steps are you guys going to take to provoke engagement from young adults in the city and get them involved with decision making?
All right, let's start with you, Lisa, on this one.
Yeah, I think that that is a great question, and I think we have a great opportunity in the form of CEI is one of our great starting points. Just within the last several years, CEI has come online. It used to be VOTEC, then ITEC, and now CEI. It's a really great place to engage with students who are really looking for that kind of one-on-one with government. In high school, it's a valid engagement, but most high school students don't really want the participation in government. But I think by the time you hit your freshman, sophomore, junior year, like we have at CEI, I think that that is really where you start to see how the local government is affecting your life. And I think that engagement through CEI is really a great way to start with better engagement with the younger people.
Okay. Christian?
So I think, Jeff talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think this goes for basically all groups of people, is that we got to peel back the barriers for them to be involved and engaged. That means information has to be super clear and easy to understand. They've got to be able to find the resources they need, and it needs to be, quick and responsive when they ask for things. The thing that kind of Lisa's mentioning is, to meet them where they're at. We're not just going to sit in our office and wait for people who want to just come and talk to us, but we need to be out in the community kind of visiting all the demographics where they're at and partnering with businesses and organizations where we can along the way to make that happen. And then I think the last thing to me, which is important for all demographics, is that public engagement has to mean something. I don't know, I kind of view it a little bit as like, a relationship. We'll just use kissing to keep it PG. But kissing in a relationship, you kind of have to do it. There's kind of two things. It's got to be frequent enough, right? It's got to be frequent enough that people are like, okay, it's frequent. It's not just when they want something. They actually do it all the time because they care. And then the second thing is it's got to be meaningful. It has to feel like they mean it. And I feel like a lot of times we feel like the government doesn't mean it a little bit here because we get explained things, the nuances. We don't feel like we're actually heard in the conversation. And we don't feel like our input actually leads to changes or outcomes. So I think those are kind of my main things. Peel back the barriers, meet them where they're at, and then make it meaningful and frequent.
That was a very interesting analogy. I appreciate that. Yeah, it really comes down to engagement and trying to demystify the whole process. So if we can communicate on platforms where people are, and that goes for young people too, all demographics. So we need to find out how we can make it more accessible, and then just try to demystify the whole process. Even when we're learning civics, young people learn more about what's happening at the federal government. I bet most people can tell you more about how the federal government works in the judiciary, legislature, all that, than they can about local levels, even though this impacts them so much more. I bet if you were to ask a young person, they probably don't know how many city council people we have, right? And so we need to make sure that we try to demystify that and educate and not in a way that's engaging. And so if we can make it easy for people to consume and access the stuff as we're going through it, we allow those pathways for engagement and communication back. That's a really great start. But especially for young people, man, there might be a great opportunity to engage with the high schools and bring them in, have them have a tour of learn what these different departments are, and have the directors give a little talk, and or maybe we go to the school. Like, if we can try to facilitate that engagement in a meaningful way, I think it'll go a long way. That's a great use of investment.
Hi there. So the other day I was on 8th Street where I live, and I was skating down the block. I roller skate a lot. And I noticed a problem that I brought up with my parents, and they've noticed this a lot around town. The sidewalks. They're a huge, huge issue. And me and my mom were having a conversation about the sidewalks in a neighborhood we used to live in near Compass Academy. And that neighborhood is just ran down. And there are a lot of areas like that. And I'm wondering what you guys would do to correct areas like that, and especially the sidewalks that affect mothers with strollers and bicyclists and people like me who like to skate.
All right. Let's go ahead with you, Jeff, for first time here.
Yeah, that's an important one. Having safety and accessibility with our public works is huge. And we want to make sure that when the city is collecting funds, that we're using those appropriately. It may not be the most glamorous thing versus new development or something, but maintaining the infrastructure that we currently have so it doesn't become a bigger budget liability later or a safety hazard is huge. And so we need to be able to, mark that and flag it when there are these safety concerns, and have a genuine roadmap of like when and where and how we can fix this in a timely manner before it becomes more of a liability. That is a good one. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, because what's important is maintaining what our assets that we currently have rather than trying to seek out new assets.
Okay, so I believe my understanding is that because their city is a fairly wide city and infrastructure is pretty expensive, my understanding is that the city has mostly adopted a practice that, when the house is built, the developer pays to put in the sidewalk for you for most properties. And then when the sidewalk needs to be repaired, it kind of falls upon the property owner to pay for it. I don't think the city right now takes responsibility for most curb and sidewalk in the city. Now, so that makes it really hard, because then you're saying, okay, like this whole street needs to be fixed, and we want all of these people, these houses, to fix their sidewalks. And yeah, you're probably not going to find a lot of volunteers that are like, yeah, let's do it. So it is hard. The one tool that I do know of that is a legal thing, that's an option that people can do, that makes it a little bit easier. You still have to pay for it, but it makes it a little bit easier, is there's kind of like a special type of taxing district that you can create for like your street or neighborhood, for example. And you could say, well, we're going to replace them all at once. You'd have to get approval from a certain number of the properties there. And then you could pay a contractor to do them all at once, so you're not doing them piece by piece. And then it's assessed to your tax bill until that contract is paid. So overall, the cost does go down for people. You do it all at once, not piece by piece. But that's up to the public and the people in the neighborhoods to actually do that. The city is not going to say, okay, we're going to force you to pay for all this. It's, you could organize one for your neighborhood if you wanted. The city's happy to help you understand the process and what that takes. But that's my understanding of what tools we have right now.
This would go back for me for some of that siloing. I totally agree with her when it comes to some of the sidewalks, and the city can enforce people to be able to fix their sidewalks. But I think one of the things that we could do to break down the silos is that the people who are out on your streets the most is actually our sanitation department. Every week, sanitation goes through the neighborhoods. And so if sanitation was tasked to start looking at the sidewalks and saying, oh, this one is the really crumbly sidewalk, this one is really crumbly here, then the city can also come in and participate with those owners. Particularly, there is access for money in which are some lower income. They're designated neighborhoods within our city, and so there would be opportunities that we could access federal funds, try and match homeowners, try and come in and say, oh, all of these sidewalks need to be replaced. But I think it's a great idea to break down some of those silos so that it isn't always the streets department who's out looking for the sidewalks. It's really the people who are on the streets once a week trying to pay attention to that. And then there are ways for the city to participate in replacing sidewalks, even though it is a homeowner's responsibility. Sidewalks are private property. They are your private property. There's a public access right-of-way to it, but, excuse me, did I say streets? Sidewalks are your private property in front of your house and behind your house if you have a sidewalk there as well.
Okay, let's go ahead.
So I think one of the biggest concerns for me with politicians is when they sign bills that they don't necessarily know what's in them, or they don't always know what the impact it has. You saw that happen a few times where they said that the bill was so big that they couldn't read the whole thing to know what was in it, and they signed it. Lisa, your signature is at the top of Reimagine Idaho Falls, the comprehensive plan. And you've talked before about how the comprehensive plan that is not legally binding. Idaho Code 676511 states, I don't know what that means.
15 seconds.
Oh, shoot. The zoning district shall be in accordance with the policies set forth in the adopted comprehensive plan. And in Prenger v. City of Shelley, decided in 1999, the Supreme Court said that an ordinance was unconstitutional because it was invalid because of the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so...
You want me to ask the question? I'll ask the question.
Yeah.
All right. So my question is, when, if ever, are politicians justified in relying on authority figures as a substitution for truly understanding the impact of their actions? That's for each candidate.
Okay. We'll start with Christian. He hasn't been first for a bit.
Yeah, I do think that it is really important that the people making the decisions are aware of the full impacts and consequences of the decisions that they make. And I do think that we do have instances where we don't necessarily know, and that's something that needs to be fixed. What the best answer is for that, have a policy analyst come in and kind of elaborate, or, just say, hey, you guys have to do your homework and really know this all through and through. There might be different ways to get people to understand. Some of the things that I've looked at personally that I've kind of seen this, I'm not sure if they understand this, are like the redevelopment districts. I'm not sure if everybody, when they sign off of these, understand the implications that it has on taxpayers. I think the police station that they had, I think a lot of them were aware of the tax impacts that came from it, but I do think that the public maybe doesn't understand it as well as they should for some of these big projects. And so this really just kind of goes into, okay, we need to have that loop with the public, and honestly, having that loop with the public, having a really good solid trust foundation with the public is also going to help have more eyes on the paper to keep the politicians in line and actually kind of make them feel the pressure to know every detail of every policy. So I do think it's important, and there's a lot of things we can do to make it better, and I guess that's just kind of where I stand.
Okay, thank you. And before we continue on, I just want to ask if everyone asking questions could just get to the question really quickly so that we can get as many of you as possible. All right, go ahead. Let's go with Lisa.
Sure. So this is Imagine IF. This is the plan that was being referenced. It is a part of just a planning document, And so when I say it does not hold the same force as code, it says it many times within the plan. I mean, these are word for words. It says the plan, which is general, a code such as the zoning and the subdivision ordinances is a specific requirement or set of requirements that come with the force of law. Codes must be followed. Codes are one of a city's most common and effective tools in implementing the vision of a plan. So, I mean, it's over and over that this is a planning tool. It's one of many planning tools that the city has. We have access management plans. We have the Imagine IF plan. We have all kinds of different plans. And then when those plans come together, then you have a hearing and you can adopt the code, adopt the ordinance. That's what's going to set the law, not the planning document. The planning document is just one of many that is used, but it's once it has an adoption, that's when it becomes law, and that adoption is always following a public hearing. There will always be a public hearing before the city council has any kind of code adoption. And so it is just one of many, many planning documents that the city has.
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm answering the question right, because it's interesting. The codes do help target. The plan, strategic plan for the growth is it has to use the codes, right? But the codes have to align to it, and sometimes the city even changes the codes to align with what the plan is. So for example, the city code actually changed because it was in the comprehensive plan to allow ADUs anywhere within the city as accessory dwelling units. Right? That was part of the missing middle, and so it's you need to be careful to say like, well, it's only the codes. It's like, well, actually, the codes are hoping to target towards what the plan is trying to point to, and sometimes the plan is the impetus or the reason why some codes are changed or amended or added. So we do need to be careful about the things that are assigned and approved, because once they're done, they're done. They're hard to undo.
Okay, thank you. And next question.
The city of Idaho Falls is continuing to grow, and growth's inevitable. You're going to be touching neighbors, both urban and residential. How are you, and this is all of you, as a mayor, going to collaboratively work with your neighbors to resolve differences? These are neighboring communities, okay? So other mayors, or for example, right? Thank you.
Right, thank you. And Jeff, let's let you go first. You haven't been first in a bit.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for the question. Yeah, I think it's important to be a good partner with our surrounding communities. I've always said that Idaho Falls, we have so much influence. We're like the gravity of which a lot of these neighboring communities orbit around. And with that, it's a lot of responsibility. So we need to make sure that we are being responsible and not taking advantage of our size, our influence, and being good partners so that as you know, traffic impacts us throughout the county and our neighboring cities like Ammon. And it's one thing if we work and repair a road, but then all of a sudden our partners don't, or vice versa. We want to make sure that those impacts on both of our communities are additive, right? And what's, I think, wonderful about coming in as a business person is that I get to rebuild these relationships wherever they are. So I'm not making assumptions, they're not making assumptions, and that we can start fresh with the goals of trying to provide for both of our communities. Because if Ammon is healthy and happy, and we're healthy and happy, that makes for a better citizenry. Because I don't think people really care necessarily like, oh, that's on the west side and that's on the east side of the road. So we need to make sure that we're good partners all around, and making those relationships and restoring any sort of bad faith or lack of trust that might have happened over time.
All right, and let's go to Lisa.
So actually in our area, Bonneville County are the ones that actually set their rules supersede Idaho Falls's. So Bonneville County is the more of the authority, even though Idaho Falls might seem bigger. We are actually all residents of Bonneville County, even if you're a resident in the city of Idaho Falls. So we do work very collaboratively with Bonneville County. I have worked in the last few years very closely to try and align the whole roadway system with Bonneville County and the city of Idaho Falls through a committee called BMPO. We had a lot of public meetings, a lot of big public engagement meetings that actually did get this size, trying to make sure that the roadway system that we have adopted, and we adopted it 2 weeks ago, that we were all on the same page, because for years we would adopt different plans, or we would work on different plans, and then there would be no implementation. So Ammon, Bonneville County, the city of Idaho Falls, Yukon, and Iona have worked together to adopt the future roadway plan. It's called the Access Management Plan and the Long Range Transportation Plan. They are planning documents again. It is going to have to be up to the individual jurisdictions to implement those plans, but we've had a commitment from each one of the city councils by adopting the plan itself to be able to work that collaboratively between us.
All right, thank you. And Christian.
So when I first started my job, it was actually kind of like before I started work, but my supervisor invited me to like a public ribbon cutting of a city kind of amenity that they had just made. And I had previously worked for Ammon, and I had just moved here, and I didn't have any like uniform or anything yet, and it was going to rain, and I had my Ammon sweater on when I went to this event. And I don't know, you could guess at how maybe some people responded, but I was actually kind of scolded afterwards, which was surprising to me because coming from Ammon, I felt like there were not like bad feelings from the Ammon side. And then I think when I came to Idaho Falls, it was like, well, there's apparently some kind of bad blood going on stuff here. Something's an issue. And that really is not okay. It doesn't, it doesn't help at all with actually organizing and working together with these people that we need to work with. You have to have a good relationship with them. And I think the first thing probably that you need to do is state that you want to have a good relationship with them. So a little ceremonial thing that could be done is the mayor's office could adopt a code of ethics saying, hey, we recognize the role of all of our partners in this area, and this is how we're going to treat them. And this is something we want all of our employees to stand by. If the other communities around us want to join in on this code of ethics, fantastic. But adopt and say, hey, we're going to commit to work together well. And then after that, I think, just like with public engagement, I think it comes down to you have to do a good job at it. You've got to make sure that the engagement with them is meaningful, it's frequent, and it actually leads to results. And, they come away from your interactions feeling like, maybe we don't agree on everything, but we feel respected, heard, and that we're making progress together, and we're going to continue working together.
Okay.
My question first is for Lisa, and then everybody else could have some input too. But how many parks are there in Idaho Falls?
So I can't tell you the number of parks because there are so many different like green spaces, but there are 500 acres of mowed and trimmed grass every week.
So you don't know how many parks there are in Idaho Falls?
No, there would be like Hoytevin and there's lots of little neighborhood pocket parks, but I can just tell you the number of acres that are mowed, because are you going to consider John's Hole? Is that a park, or is that just green space? So we have lots of different green spaces that might not be considered an actual park, but it is 500 acres of the grass that gets cut and trimmed that I would consider it a park. Maybe it's not a named park, but it is a parkway or green grass or what the Parks Department would maintain.
Okay, so we don't have an answer to that. But my question is, well, I'm a mom to five children. I have a lot of mama friends with little ones. Not one of us has complained that there's not enough parks for our kids to play in, or not one of us has said this park is so crowded. Junior had such a horrible time. So my question is, why on earth do we need another park?
Okay. Well, it was.
She kind of asked it, and then
She kind of asked after already, and in the interest of time, we've got to kind of. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so when the city was developing impact fees, it was, here is our population, here is the number of acres of parks that we have. It's considered the level of service. And so if we're going to be able to keep up with our current population, with what citizens of Idaho Falls had in 2022, then that is why you would add the parks. It's a level of service. It's the same way that we're going to move forward with the police vehicles and fire. It's the level of service that was established, and that's why you collect the impact fees. And so depending on where you live in the city of Idaho Falls, if you live in Ivywood, you want a park. I've heard that many, many times. So people who live in the more established parts of the town, they don't maybe feel like they need a park because there are lots of parks. But as you move to the fringes, that's where we're going to have to start establishing parks. Otherwise, we will lose that level of service that Idaho Falls residents did enjoy before all of the growth started to become too much to manage.
Christian?
I think I saw in an infographic the other day, I think the city claims that it has 50 plus parks, but I don't know for sure. Okay, I'm not 100%, but I think that was at the top of their budget book this year, I think. And that might include some of those green spaces that aren't named parks, right? They might not all have names. And I love parks. You know, I have Shadows Park, which is a new park right next, pretty close to my house. It's the best toddler park in town for anybody who has toddlers. And we do enjoy that one. It's a small park. And yeah, I wouldn't say it's not like crowded. And, you know, like Lisa says, the city probably has to have something that they use to decide, well, how much park is enough park. And, you know, they have to have some sort of standard that they establish. Now, it is, of course, up to the city to always look back and say, okay, is the standard that we've set appropriate? Should the standard be the same across all of town? You know, does it depend on size of park? You know, and that could be reviewed. I think that would be a great question to sit down with, like, the Parks and Rec director, with people who are interested in getting the answers to those questions and saying, okay, well, what is the standard we use to define how many parks we need? And is it right? And is it going to be the same everywhere? You know, what's the plan? And we'd love that public input, I'm sure. Also, I don't know, I'm down for more questions if people are wanting to stay longer. No idea if there's flex on the time, but I know we're kind of getting there.
Okay, and Jeffrey?
Yeah. I had the privilege of meeting PJ Holm last week. He's a director of Parks and Rec. And he was going through all what they service. And the official number is 46 parks is the official. But what I was surprised at is that the Parks and Rec is responsible for a lot of things that doesn't seem to be in their lane. For example, there are many communities that are HOAs that have retention ponds that the city is responsible for maintaining. Now, I don't know why they accepted that, because now that's an overhead liability that the city has to maintain that only benefits a few people, when it should be the responsibility of whatever homeowners association is. Like our homeowners association pays for our retention pond, but the HOA next to us, they have the city do that. And I don't think that's a fair use of funds when we could be investing those back into the city where it's actually enjoyed. So I think the number of parks we have is probably appropriate. It's what kind of functions and features do we have that makes it engaging? What makes it fun? And so if we can free that overhead, right, from these liabilities that we've assumed, I think that can go a long way to using the same resources and investing back in our community in a different way.
All right, thank you. Jenna? 1 second.
Okay, I'm going to break my own rule, okay, because it is 8:30, and I was going to say let's shut it off there, but these three have been standing there for quite a while. Okay, so these are the last three. I'm just going to ask you to be quick with the question, and then instead of 2 minutes, if it's for, do it in a minute, Okay, let's just hurry up and get through. They've been standing there, and so let's give them that opportunity. And they are the last three. Thank you.
I just wonder, maybe some of those impact fees to go help fix the old parks instead of putting in new parks where they're going to drive BMWs to them or something. So I don't know. Okay, my question is, do any of you know what the current vacancy rate is of all of the apartments that are currently already created? But in reality, I really want to know about, since all of these apartment people are not going to be, the people who live in the apartments and the condominiums and the people who bought them are not going to be voting positive for school bonds in the future. What do you think the role is of the city in helping offset the impact for our schools, since you've brought all of these apartments in?
Great question. Christian, let's start with you.
All right, quickly with the first one, occupancy rate. I think if businesses are willing to exchange information with us, I think we would love to use that for our benefit to understand what's going on. But I don't feel it would be super well received by the business community to require them to participate and require them to give us information about how well their business is doing. That's very private information that they probably care about. We could, if we really needed to, have good people just observe, well, how many cars are parked at these places? Let's get just a general idea of how, full things are, if that were to be useful for some sort of policy decision that we're looking into. Then the other part of the question, what was the other part of the question? School bonds. So I do think, while the school board is a separate entity than the city, I would love to see more engagement and advocacy from the city involving the progress of school districts. I think the city should take a place in it and collaborate with them, but the biggest thing that they probably have is to say, we have a voice and we can say this is how these kinds of bonds are going to affect our city, and we're going to put in the city's 2 cents on how it's going to affect us. I think the city elected officials is what I should say, not just like city administrators. Elected officials should be involved and have opinions about how education evolves in our community. That's probably the best support that the city can give.
Okay, and let's go with Lisa.
I will try and be very quick. The city and the school district does have a good relationship. I know that the common denominator up here is like, oh, if we just had a good relationship, We have a great relationship. I'm not sure why the narrative is if you only had a good relationship. I meet with the superintendent every month. I know that District 93 has their lowest kindergarten class entering than they've had in 15 years. We have a member of the school district that sits on planning and zoning as a permanent member. So regardless of who that person is, District 91 always has a seat available on our planning and zoning. We've actually taken all of our maps and we have included all of the school boundaries that sit within the city of Idaho Falls. So I know the narrative is like, oh, there's just these terrible relationships. We have great working relationships with all of these entities.
Okay. And Jeff?
Yeah. The hard part with impact fees, this is Idaho state law, is that the money that is collected for impact fees cannot go to schools, unfortunately. Other states actually do this differently, and they can actually have developers be a part of the process for development of schools. So it's really difficult that a lot of our funding for schools comes from these bonds, and unfortunately, it seems like the bonds are unrealistic rather than realistic, and because it requires a supermajority, a 2/3, it's really hard to pass. And I think if it was more reasonable, if the bonds were more reasonable, and it was more transparent when it just assumed like this is how much it's actually going to impact you based on your property value, very easy to see. I think it would be easier for people to buy off. But that's how we have to go about funding schools, unfortunately.
All right, thank you. And come on up.
Hi,
Thank you for being here, first of all. For context, my question is about aging infrastructure in the older parts of Idaho Falls. I live on the numbered streets. The house was built in 1920, and I won't go into the details. I'm happy to do this offline because I don't want to hold this up. But what are you going to do to reassure citizens who live in areas where infrastructure has not been properly maintained or updated, and I have records from the city to prove it? How are you going to reconcile that so future citizens who might live in older neighborhoods are going to be taken care of?
Lisa, let's start with you.
I think that those are great public engagement touch points to be able to have with the neighborhoods so that they can be moved up in some kind of priority, because the city does have obviously plans for replacing things. I assume you're talking about a water line, maybe? Yes, ma'am. Yes, so it is important to make sure that those move up in priority as those residents start feeling the effects. We just don't know always what's below the surface. We know what we have below the surface, but we don't know how they're always being cared for below the surface. And so as we have neighborhood meetings, that's a great way to figure out which one of them need to be replaced. Maybe they are not as old as the oldest ones, but sometimes newer ones have defects in them. And so for sure, it's public engagement in those neighborhoods.
Thank you. And we'll go to you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, maintaining what we already have is a huge issue. We need to make sure that, because it's cheaper to have maintenance than to have to reconcile failing infrastructure. What we don't want to get to is that point and how that can totally disengage and you know, it's a safety issue if you didn't have water, right, on several city blocks, or your water was not safe on several city blocks. That's something that we need to be aware of and conscious of, and be more intentional with what we already have, rather than always focusing on the next thing that we're going to be building. So that would be my thing, is really just trying to be conscious and aware of where all infrastructure, any infrastructure in the city, and what those general maintenance timelines are. There's got to be best practices of when, and at least engaging with them and doing surveys and figuring out where they are, with earmarking when and how they need to be reworked.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, you know, yeah, like Lisa said, they do have a plan of when they want to do some stuff, but it's, you know, that same relationship with the public that the city is you know, is it fostered enough that the people are aware of what's going on in their neighborhood, and do they move in and they even know that that's kind of an issue that they've got to wait for, and that kind of information, you know, I'm sure it could be challenging if you're trying to send that out and make sure every new resident that gets there. But I mean, I imagine if you close the silos between the departments, that the utility billing place might say, for example, hey, you've moved in this house, you just get this card that has some information. You know, I think there's ideas, and the city just needs to do a better job at engaging with the public, so that that's a tight-knit loop. And when there's more urgency, like she said, it can be addressed maybe more timely, and they can adjust and adapt as needed.
All right, go right ahead.
So I know my neighbors to the left and the right of me and across the street, but I don't know any of my two-story Wasatch townhouse neighbors that are right behind me. How are you guys taxing the apartments and the townhouses and stuff? I pay 1.5 to 2 times my mortgage for property taxes and stuff. Are you guys doing that for each unit? Are they paying their fair share? Are they like invested in the community? I have a problem calling them, like, not neighbors, but like when you say they're residents, when they're tenants and you're stacking them high and deep and stuff, like how are we making sure that it's like even load, and that what are we gonna do for homeowners? Property tax went up in 2020 and they're starting to come back down, but now property taxes, like the actual property land is going up. Like, can we either give us like a higher homeowners exemption, or why are we being taxed on unrealized gains? Because I bought my house at a certain price knowing that I could afford that, and it just keeps going up and up.
Okay, thank you. Let's go with Jeffrey on this one.
Yeah, that's definitely a hard one. When your assessed value of your home has maybe tripled in the last 10 years, that's what you're paying taxes on. And it's not like you've necessarily acquired that much individual wealth. That's theoretical equity that at some point that you'll hopefully be able to take advantage of. But for renters, they are paying the taxes based on whoever owns that property. So whoever owns that property is paying the taxes on that, and that's going to the county and the city, and so they're paying that indirectly through whatever their rent is. Now, the thing is what we should do is ideally is try to encourage and find ways for home ownership so that people have equity like yourself. I don't want a dependent class of renters in this community that'll never be able to get out of that cycle of renting. And it provides stability for the community. It provides stability for them too. So they're not on this constant cycle of every 12 to 24 months of their rents going up to cover whatever costs the developers have on the property itself.
All right. Yep. Let's go with Christian.
So yeah, the taxes are distributed based off of property value. So whatever that apartment complex is valued at, a couple million or whatever, however many, it gets taxed for that value. And then, yeah, the person who is renting it out to people just passes that cost on down to them. And they don't get any homeowner's exemption on that because it's a private property. Now, the homeowner's exemption, you are kind of talking about, well, that we had one. It's one that the state created many years ago. And now since we just had a big change in the economy and land values, we're seeing certain people get more significant tax changes than others. And really, this is a state policy that it would be great for the city to work with, and all the cities across the state to work with the state and say, hey, okay, we want to be able to give tax relief to homeowners. We want to build that equity. And there's some issues about the model we've used so far. Where can we go from here? Is there a way we can adjust that? See if the state's open to that, but that's going to be a state thing.
Okay, thank you. And Lisa.
Sure, it is a state thing, but as local government, we can advocate for our residents, and we should advocate for our residents. The homeowner's exemption is $125,000, and so when 5 years ago, if your house was valued at $200,000, you were paying on $75,000. And now, if your house is $400,000, you still only have the $125,000 tax exemption. So you're paying now taxes on $275,000 with that rate. And so people's residential property taxes are rising. Maybe commercial goes down, and the fluctuation is so great. So I would absolutely advocate for at least putting the homeowner's exemption indexed by what the values are going up. And this is another reason I would say that I would support, through legislative means, a local option tax to try and help stabilize some of that property tax.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, and Doug, are we going to stay with the 3 minutes for closing? Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and start with you, Christian, 3 minutes.
Okay, I think just judging by the questions that have been asked and the way that the audience has responded, I feel like a lot of you are here and listening. You're very concerned about your frustrations and things that you feel like the city hasn't done well. You really speaks to that trust that has just not been cultivated really well over years and years, and that public engagement feedback loop that has just not really been nourished as well as it should. And I think that is one of the biggest things for me that I would like to push if I were mayor, is really restoring that trust and getting out information that you understand, that you can act on, and you can give good feedback on and actually influence the outcomes of the decisions that the city is making. And it also, just a big part of getting that trust, I think, like I was kind of saying in the beginning, every candidate here thinks that feedback loop and that trust needs to be improved. So the question is, who's going to actually do it, right? It's like we might say this for years, and I think transparency and some of those things have been mentioned several years, and I don't know if we're quite seeing the results. So the question is, who's going to do it? And in my point of view, it's probably going to be a person who can manage it well and get it done, can hire the right team, and can maybe coach or let go some of the people that are barriers to making it happen if they can't not see the public approval as an obstacle. Then we may need to get different people that can really treat that public approval like it should be treated. And yeah, I just think it's going to take a good manager to really get it all done, and I think that's it. I guess I'm not sure how much time I have, but I'm trying to focus more on the management side, and I am drafting kind of a general plan as to how I would go about fixing this exact problem, because I think you guys deserve an idea of what a mayor is going to do before they actually get into office. And more than just I value this, but you should actually see what milestones they're going to push, how they're going to start their first 90 days, kind of a thing. So that's one thing I'm working on for you guys. Stay tuned.
All right. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, so once again, I do appreciate the candidates. I appreciate the opportunity to come and to listen and to also try and have education back and forth. As the mayor, I think that we really need to bring back the clear priorities of what the city does. I think that we have a lot of balls in the air. I think we need to be able to know what the city does and then execute really well. I know where those silos sit. I know where we need to break those down. I think that engagement in the community, when you are truly engaged, you're in the community doing things. You're part of Rotary, you're part of the civic clubs, you're part of the school district, you're part of everything, so that your touch points aren't just in public hearings. You have lots of touch points with the community. I know it is not popular, the apartments. The apartments do serve a purpose. We talk about affordable housing. We don't want them on the fringes. We want to be able to maintain our pipes. But if we're putting pipes 3 miles outside of town, it's really hard to maintain those pipes. It's better for the residents of Idaho Falls to have streets that we're already maintaining, pipes that we're already maintaining, and then to add some density into those neighborhoods. I know it's not popular with this crowd, but it does reduce the breakage and the infrastructure needs down the future. We're already there doing that kind of infrastructure updating. And so that is urban centers are where your highest density should be, where you can get access to daily amenities as opposed to building on the fringe. I think I've heard many times there's problems here and there's problems there, and you have to be able to say, where do those points intersect? Taxes, affordable housing, maintenance, apartments, land uses, they all have to come together, and the public engagement is a really important part of that, but also public education is also another really important piece of that. And that's the one thing that on the campaign trail that we just have to be able to come back and forth together to be able to understand what is happening as we grow. So we have like the Public Works Department, and we have the Fire Department, and we have all 11 departments, and oftentimes people say, I went to planning and zoning. What's planning and zoning? Did they go to the Public Works? Did they go to Community Development Services? We don't even have a department called planning and zoning. And so when they come, then there isn't a way to say, well, this was the answer from the city. They feel like they went to planning and zoning. Okay, you know, what did you do? What was planning and zoning? And so there's oftentimes too many silos
Yeah, can
that
we,
each departments don't talk back and forth.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, that was, we understand the question for that. But the silos obviously is just the departments, and just think of it as that, I think, for right now. And so we'll go ahead and continue with
Jeff, yes.
Yeah, I'm so thankful everybody came out tonight. This is amazing to see this type of engagement, yeah, thank you. This is awesome, and thank you for the hard questions. Thank you for being engaged. I appreciate this. I think it makes for better candidates. It makes for better policy. It makes us think differently about how we go about things, and yeah, thank you. What I find, what I'm looking forward to, is we have an opportunity to have new leadership within the city. We can have a continuation of what we've had, but on November 4th, you have an opportunity to really make an impact and a difference on the city. Now, I'm not from, I didn't come from politics. That wasn't my background. I didn't want to. It was only until I saw things going in a direction that was going away from the citizens that I decided to step up, because I love this community so much, and I want it to be a place where my kids can grow up and start their families here too. And from all my experience from management and leadership on the corporate side is exactly what's needed, this proven leadership for an executive level position like the mayor, right? I've hired, fired, managed budgets. It's really encouraging when you do something and you see the stock price go up and to the right. It's like, hey, look at that. The contributions actually had merit and value. Because if they didn't, I wouldn't still be at the same company that I am for 15 years. And so I have a proven track record, and I would love to take all those best practices and find out how to appropriately apply them to city government. I know everybody here cares about the policy, and that's incredibly important, but there's that other benefit that everybody benefits from with an effective and efficient city government. And what I love to do is to be that new leader who's able to work with all of our directors, right, and do these skip-level meetings and meet with the people who actually do the work and find those opportunities where we can pull away those roadblocks. We can find that low-hanging fruit with the focus. Our focus as a city is for you, the citizens. How could we make it better, the quality of life for you, and be good stewards of our resources? So I'm super excited that there's this opportunity, and I'm super excited that there's this engagement, and I think all of you should be super excited that you have an opportunity to vote for your next mayor of Idaho Falls.
All right. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Lisa, Christian, and Jeffrey, and I'll turn it right back over to Doug.
Well, thank you, Jolene. Let's give Jolene a big hand for helping us with this. Thank you. Thank you so much. And you know, let's give these guys, the candidates, a big hand. I mean, a real big hand. You know, some comments that I want to make. You know, being a mayor or whatnot is not an easy job. Okay? And for these guys and gals, you know, it takes a lot to put yourself out to do this. And again, for just even doing that, let's give them a big hand, because if you're going to throw rocks at any of them, or anything like that, then my comment to you is, why aren't you up here? Okay, why aren't you up here? Before any of us throw rocks at anybody, you know, we need to ask ourselves, why are we not up here? Because you can sit out there, and I'm guilty, so I can say that I can sit out there and I can grouse all day long about what's going on. But until you decide that you're going to get up and put yourself in this hot seat, you know, you have a limited right to act. Well, you have all the right to gripe. You know, that's the First Amendment and all that. But just be aware that it takes a lot of courage to come up here and to do this. And again, being a mayor, no matter we could fix it. I could fix this in a heartbeat. No, that can't. You know, it just doesn't work that way. And be realistic. Your family doesn't work that way. Okay? Oh, well, if my wife or my husband would just do this, life would be easier. right? Well, guess what? That's not the way it works. So again, let's give them a big hand. I really appreciate it all. Some things that I'd ask, this is what Stand Up for Idaho is all about. You asking the questions. I'm not going to censor them. I'm not going to do it scripted or anything. None of this is scripted. You come and ask the questions. That's tough for these folks. They have no clue what's coming after them. But again, it takes a lot of courage on all of their parts to be up here. And with that, again, that's what Stand Up for Idaho is about. If you have any suggestions on how to improve what we've done on this, please send me a note at info@standupforidaho.org, and I try to make these happen, okay? Because this is really important to us. We need to have this opportunity for you to ask the questions, and so that you know who the candidates are. And with that, like I say, send me suggestions and whatnot. Well, especially for next week, because we'll have 6 of the 7 out here. We'll probably cut their time a little bit, but we'll enjoy that. And I'll just be bold about it. If you like what we do, I sure could stand you throwing a few dollars into the jar over there. That's the only income that we have, actually, is from what we collect from the donations there and this flag. Hopefully we'll collect some things on this flag. You really ought to look at that. It's an awesome thing. And raffle tickets are $20 a piece, and it'd be grateful if you could buy 1 or 100. Okay, it'd be wonderful. So anyway, help us that way. And again, next week, Idaho Falls City Council seat 2. It's good. We rake these people over the coals about mayor. Well, the mayor is only one of how many people?
They're the tiebreaker of 7 elections.
They're the tiebreaker. Okay, so in theory, they are just the tiebreaker. Okay, so we know that doesn't quite work that way, but so we'll have to see. But anyway, the next few weeks we'll have the city council candidates up here, and it's important to come. So with that, one last time, big hand for everybody here. Okay, and we'll see you next week. Be careful going home. Thank you so much.